The future is a concept. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be, because time is always now. That's one of those things that we discover when we stop talking to ourselves and stop thinking. We find there's only present, only an internal now. Alan Watts.
So KYC utility that we're working around also in the Nordics would be harmonizing and really simplifying things for customers to onboard themselves to banks, where we can collaborate with fintechs and become so much more agile.
Okay, and I also know that SEB is working with Ripple in cross-border payments. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing with Ripple? Again, what are the benefits?
So we are exploring the DLT. We are not yet using any crypto or so. We are not fit for that yet, we believe. But on the DLT, we are exploring how the benefits look and also how to connect those to legacy systems, as we have to live with both for quite a long time probably. So the benefits is 2 seconds. Before this year, actually we talked about this last year, it was only one customer on it then. Now we have all customers of SEB doing transfer intercompany between Sweden and the US. They are on the Ripple platform. So we have a couple of billion going through that, and we are trying to understand how that goes and what we would need to make it happen even better, and also in the future exploring what could be the next step of this. So it's really exciting, and our IT people are all over this and think it's a good idea. So I'm happy that business and IT are collaborating on something really new.
This is Paula De Silva. She worked at SEB when they partnered with Ripple and then moved to P27, which is a consortia of Nordic banks. This consortia is creating a cross-border payments platform between Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. SEB is one bank in P27. So is Nordea. Nordea is involved with P27. They were also involved in a 2016 proof of concept that tested the XRP ledger with R3 and 12 other banks. Roman Dahl from Nordea Bank states, by developing blockchain with native digital assets specifically dedicated to cross-border transactions, Ripple has great potential to revolutionize traditional global payments concepts, enabling international payments in real time. Paula De Silva states, by using Ripple's distributed financial technology, our customers can initiate real-time transfers between their SEB accounts in Sweden and the bank's branch in New York. In the next step, we plan to expand the solution to include all geographies and time zones in which we operate.
So the difference that we will be trying to do is to enable this for the banking industry, and actually in an open market for all kind of players that make the resilience efforts that we are trying to create. So it's not a closed area, it's open for everyone. So that's the difference between potential stable coins that are trying to create their own universe, everyone. This is an open one for all the different countries. So enabling growth, enabling resilience, but also creating, which I think is extremely important. And if we just disregard technology, we have to be interoperable. And that's, I think, what TIPS is also enabling. Having the central banks being able to talk to each other in Europe is extremely important, of course, irregardless of if it has to be an FX on top of it. At least you have to have a way of talking to each other, and we don't have that today. And we have Swish in Sweden, we have Vips in Norway, we have Mobile Pay in Denmark, and you have Sirto in Finland, all extremely good. Nothing talks to each other. So while everyone in Sweden that is included in the financial sector, and that's also an issue, how can we include everyone? CDBC doesn't help that, because if you're not in a bank account environment, you don't have a bank ID, you cannot actually access the next infrastructure either. So financial inclusion is extremely important. That might mean that you have a way of entering the market that is more open somehow.
P27 is an open platform that allows Nordic countries to send cross-border payments in real time. This open platform is also interoperable with Europe's payment system called TIPS.
And we're a network. We're trying to facilitate these transactions. So initially, we feel that there are more people willing to pay with cryptocurrencies. There isn't as much of an acceptance network as of now. But we think it's coming. So as a result, we said, okay, well, let's at least get ready to set up the stage. And doing so, we're working with a number of different partners, with Ripple, TBS, different companies around the world to say, well, how can you help this whole transaction go from front to back? We've set up all the networks, we're ready to go.
MasterCard as well as Visa are evolving. They have moved to creating a CBDC platform as well as infrastructure. Ripple has partnered with MasterCard in order to set up the stage.
Data is what we need to have in the system, not for every bank or for every country, but actually cross country, so that you can identify the receiver and the payer. And therefore, P27 is actually an infrastructure that is not only Nordic, but it's actually built on when the card companies have understood that their good margin is threatened, they are looking into enabling payments. And our infrastructure will actually be built on MasterCard payment rails. So that's an enigma how that has come about. But with the regulator, as you said, coming about saying that, no, you can't have those margins, that has created other ways of actually interacting in the payment space. So what are we trying to do? Enabling growth, basically, in a seamless way, because today payments is potentially the hinder for growth, which is kind of interesting. It's difficult to pay, as you very well said.
Payments are hindering growth. The regulators are forcing Visa and MasterCard to lower fees. This is why they're evolving into infrastructure. 2% of GDP is paid to Visa and MasterCard. We have 8% inflation. Just by eliminating credit card fees, we can drop inflation to 6%. Now think about what would happen if you dropped cross-border fees. This is the impetus for banks and governments to embrace digital assets.
For the Eurozone, the fees for debit and credit cards amount to 1.6% of GDP.
Oh my God.
Let me say this again. If you take the Eurozone GDP and you say, well, how much of that GDP goes to credit card? It's 1.6%.
Mm-hmm.
All of that, billions of dollars going to Visa and MasterCard. All of that could go to humanity to do more. And ready? Wait for it. In the US, this number I'm 100% sure of, it's 2.2% of GDP goes to credit card fees.
It's crazy.
And it's crazy. So every time that you buy a coffee and you tap and pay, what you're really missing is that your local coffee shop has to increase the prices of the coffee to make sure that, he's recovering, you're paying for those fees. And, what's really horrible about it is, and most people don't even think about this, is that those fees are highly regressive. Rich people who have the latest iPhone and think they're cool by using Apple Pay because they've got the latest gizmos, right? Mm-hmm. They don't really care about that 2%. It's not bothering them. But the people on the opposite side, ready, who don't have that iPhone and are actually paying cash because they are humble people, they are paying that 2% or whatever it is in addition to their payment. In other words, if they're buying that coffee, they're still paying that extra couple of percent that the coffee shop has to tack on. It is extremely regressive. It hurts the bottom part who has this automatic tax put onto everything, and the top part of the economy, including our central bankers, our central bankers who are wealthy people, they don't care. Mm-hmm. So for them, they say repeatedly, central bank digital currency is a problem looking for a solution. We don't see how it could possibly help anyone. Meanwhile, the bottom half of our society, or more than the bottom half, they're looking and they're paying these fees for credit card, even though they're using cash.
Technology is deflationary. I don't need a navigation system or a camera or an MP3 player. I have a cell phone. This one item replaces everything. That in turn is deflationary because I'm not spending money on an MP3 player. We have a battle with inflation, and just by eliminating fees, we can reduce inflation by 2%. Digital assets like XRP allow cross-border payments to happen in real time for a fraction of a penny. By removing frictions alone, everyone benefits, including governments and central bankers, during this high period of inflation.
So first, on competition, I had a lot of pushback from the Bank Policy Institute chief economist Bill Nelson, saying there are thousands of banks in the US banking system. How can you say that the banking system is not competitive? The Herfindahl indices suggest otherwise. But it's not the degree of concentration that matters in this case. It's the cost of switching from one bank to another, whether to open or close an account. And also, I don't know if you've ever tried to move funds from one bank to another. I'm not sure how the experience is in Sweden. You have direct transfers here. But in the United States, if you launch a request on a bank website to move funds to another bank, it's actually quite an operation. So it's the competition that would come from a central bank digital currency or an interoperable fast payment system or other, let's say, neobanks entering the system would be not to only to add more players to the market, but to lower the walls around the walled gardens that currently surround the largest banks, to make it easier to swish, if you don't mind the metaphor, to swish your money from one bank to another.
Banks have updated their infrastructure to create more open systems. These updated systems are necessary in order to utilize digital assets.
The problem that we encountered, I mean, we kind of thought that we could take a direct line to settling with a digital asset. And I think a lot of people thought that, well, now we have digital assets, let's just use them for payments and that'll be that. Part of the problem is that the payment systems are just not capable of supporting instantaneous settlement. So if you think about a payment system like SWIFT, where you just kind of push a payment message out, and you don't necessarily know the entire path, and you don't know the fees until later, you don't even know if the destination account even exists until sometime later when the payment is actually processed by the destination institution. There's no way that you could build instantaneous settlement into a system like that. So we kind of found ourselves in this situation where if we wanted institutions to settle their international payments with a digital asset, we first had to rebuild the payment messaging, sort of the plumbing. And we discovered something interesting on the way. What we discovered was that the existing plumbing was so bad, I mean, it dates back to batch computing days, that just improving that messaging was a product. That was something that banks and non-bank financial institutions would be interested in. And so we focused on building a top-notch payment network that can settle with a digital asset. And I think it's fair to say that we haven't yet proven that we can actually settle with the digital asset. We're just making that transition from building a payment network that can settle with a digital asset to figuring out where you really want to settle with a digital asset and making that settlement happen.
As we see with P27 tips the clearinghouse, these payment systems have been updated. We're moving in a world where there is high inflation, and removing friction is a deflationary force that digital assets enable. Fiat over time has always returned to its intrinsic value, which is zero. Technology will keep bandaging the cracks in the system, and at the same time it's an open runway to transition into a new economic model completely. The cracks in the system welcomes the tech, and eventually the tech swallows the old system entirely. A tokenized, digitized new world. You are not some separate little puppet which is being kicked around by omnipotence. You are omnipotence in disguise, and so there is no victim of this. No helpless, defenseless, poor little thing. Thanks everyone, I hope you enjoyed the show. Please take a moment to like and subscribe. Tell me what you think in the comments below. If you enjoy content like this, consider joining my Patreon, where I put up ad-free videos, research, as well as we have weekly Zoom chats every Friday.